What you're about to uncover is not just a story, it's an investigation. An investigation built on confidential reports, insider whispers, and theories so dark they shatter the carefully polished image of the Brown family and their so-called dream at Coyote Pass. The version of events you've been fed? A facade. The truth behind it? Something far more disturbing. Welcome to TLC Sister Wives Real News. But first, let's tear down the layers of what may well be reality television's biggest ecological and economic sham. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell in 1 second. You'll be hooked, I assure you. Each subsequent turn is a better one than the last. Let us return to 2017. The Browns, eager to flee an hostile public, purchased a gigantic multi-acre estate in Flagstaff, Arizona. They called it Coyote Pass. On TV, it was presented as fantasy, a kingdom where Cody Brown and his 4 wives, Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin, would begin constructing together but apart. Cody himself declared, "This is it. The promised land." But promises are cheap. The public was offered a whole other scenario, one of economic hardship, incessant bickering, and a family poised to collapse. Over $820,000 spent on land purchase put them into economic straits. Utilities alone cost hundreds of thousands more. Folks were led to believe the Brown family was merely snowed under, bickering over trees, holding up construction, and broke. It was TV drama that appeared all too real. But hey, race the hook, what if none of that was really why? What if the repeated delays, excuses, and squabbling were all merely part of something staged? A charade designed to cover a conspiracy too vile to be spoken. Because the facts show the problem wasn't money, indecision, or family discord. Cody Brown wasn't befuddled by indecision, he was waiting. Waiting for something toxic to seep its way out of the earth. Watch closely at the video with that in mind, and now the red flags are impossible to ignore. Cody's strange obsession with one thing, a cistern. While the rest of the family was discussing blueprints and blue skies for months, his sole concern was uncovering a water tank buried underground. He stated, "We need this water. Nothing can happen without it." Practical on the surface. But sources familiar with this investigation say it wasn't for cocktails. The underground tank, they claim, was the perfect place in which to mix and dilute a highly poisonous chemical, off the grid, untraceable, hidden in plain sight. And then the constant negotiating about blocks of land. Christine needed trees. Janelle needed space for a greenhouse. Cody laid down boundaries, invalidated them, and redrawn them once again. It seemed manipulation or just indecision at the time. But what those with knowledge of the inside were aware of was that the reality was evenly weighed. Cody could not deed the property over to his wives since they were not included in the master plan. The property was always intended to be kept intact, easily subdivided into dozens of saleable parcels for some future development scheme. His indecisiveness was actually a legal tactic. But this is the worst of it, Cody didn't actually display emotion while building this fantasy. Christine wept over her ideal that had been lost and Janelle begged to get on with things, and he kept his distance, almost clinical. This isn't the gaze of a broken patriarch, it's the gaze of a man bearing an almighty secret and concerned with timelines getting away from him. Each fight, each rationalization, each loss, all gave him time. Time for the prairie dogs to vanish. Time for poisons to kill the work quietly. Time for the desert sun to scorch and burn the remnants. And just when it seemed that plan was successfully in motion, Janelle dropped a wrench in the machinery. In the summer of 2021, frustrated with paying rent in town, she moved a fifth-wheel RV directly onto Coyote Pass. Cameras captured her excitement as she declared, "I'm going to be living on the land. It's an adventure." But what the show promoted as independence was something far more sinister. Janelle inadvertently positioned herself at the center of Cody's clandestine business. On television, Janelle's RV move was presented as a woman asserting herself, a test of stubbornness and independence. But our investigation shows us a far grimmer story. Instead of pioneering and staking out ground, Janelle was likely an unsuspecting pawn in a ruthless experiment. She wasn't pushing her limits, she was, on the charges, a living censor. Consider for a moment, a person who has been heralded as brave who perhaps was left behind where she might determine whether air and earth were safe for human beings. Do not move, next piece of information will surprise you. Cody's response to Janelle's action is particularly revealing. Most husbands would hesitate at the idea of their spouse living on undeveloped land with no running water. Instead, he praised her, almost gleefully. "Wow, you're really doing it. This is great. You're tough, Janelle," he said on camera. That outward encouragement, our sources claim, wasn't admiration. It was calculation. According to insiders, Janelle's presence served two strategic roles, a believable cover and a living alarm bell. Stay tuned, the second article is about how those jobs complemented each other. First, cover. An openly visible family member living on the land made unusual nighttime activity seem innocent. Odd trucks, midnight labor, odd lights, all could be explained as goofy reality TV living rather than something much more sinister. Neighbors and the police would find a woman living on the property and consider contacting business as usual. Second, watching. The substance itself, our informant told us, was experimental and unstable, never used where human beings live. The idea, as described to us, was brutally simple and heartless. Fill the property with the substance, then wait and watch Janelle. Any unexplained coughs, rashes, chronic fatigue, or neurological harm would be proof the chemicals still lingered. Her body would be the measure, her health the tool. The second half of this section will detail who finally decided to blow the operation wide open. This was theory that could have been forum-level rumor, rumor on forums, for years and could never have been anything more, had one individual not been able to silence it. Alex Reyes showed up at an EPA field office in Phoenix during the spring of 2023 with documents he couldn't ignore. One of the former workers, a former logistics coordinator for Vidian Land Solutions, one of the shell companies, Reyes explained about being involved in the Coyote Pass scam and not being able to live with the conscience. There were so many things that didn't add up, he told investigators. We called it soil remediation. But when I saw Cody Brown's name on the partnership papers and recognized that Janelle lived out there, I was sick. Wait, documents he brought turned everything around. Reyes wasn't a marginal witness. Head set up trucks, padded manifests, and delivered payroll for crews that worked at night. He produced emails, shipping documents on unmarked barrels of chemicals, and coded payment vouchers. Worst was a contract that tied the whole scam together. An in-house agreement Reyes called the Phoenix Rising contract. The deal, he said, created a written partnership between Cody Brown and Vidian Land Solutions, a company we now follow through a chain of suspect land deals along the Southwest. It was structured, profitable, and, in many minds, morally suspect. The next paragraph describes that the transaction itself was rigged. The first move was the buyout. Legally, the Browns publicly purchased Coyote Pass for roughly $820,000. Behind the scenes, the deal called for Vidian to pay for the vast majority, the approximately 90%, so Cody's actual cash on the table was zero effectively. Why would they not mention it? Since the property wasn't cheap because of prairie dogs only, it contains something much more dangerous wrong. A previous environmental study, one Cody wasn't legally allowed to disclose, revealed arsenic and mercury readings above the norm, toxins that make land virtually unusable for residential use safe from impairment. Calling it a plague site was an easy dismissal. A prairie dog invasion is the solution to price declines without triggering probes of dirty dirt. Hold on to your hat, the technique they claim to use to correct that problem is the part that will leave your jaw on the ground. Phase 2 of the transaction was the so-called cleansing, an on-paper remediation scheme that promised to neutralize threats. Practically, the records Reyes testified to show, it was about hosing down the entire 14-acre parcel with a test, unregistered sterilant internally coded as TCD-7. TCD-7 was described by reports as a very active dioxin-like substance. It was intended to incinerate residual biological weapons and, most importantly, act as a chelating agent in chelating heavy metals on the Earth's surface and eventually transmute them into less traceable forms. The pact even established a time frame, months to put into place, up to 18 months to let the chemical reaction settle. But the smoking gun, TCD-7, never had been approved for use on land zoned for residential purposes. Regulators had banned it because it was so poisonous. Don't leave anywhere. The subsequent legal and ethical fallout of that bombshell is coming next. If this is accurate, they report a scam based on environmental manipulation and economic opportunism, buy polluted land at a low cost, cap the grime with a plausibly sounding biological explanation, attempt an unauthorized chemical cleanup, and resell or re-subdivide the land when the new tests read cleaner. Federal authorities discovered enough in the whistleblowers' cache of documents to open probes into whether any laws had been violated, whether there was use of untested chemicals where humans resided, and whether individuals who consumed food and beverages and those who lived in the area were placed in danger. The documents Reyes handed over became the foundation for a case federal authorities could no longer turn a blind eye to. Then, what regulators learned when they went deeper, and why this story matters, way far beyond one TV family. The chemical used at Coyote Pass was one that ordinary soil samplers couldn't detect. Invisible after it dissolved in the dirt, it continued quietly, a ghost in the ground, with long-term effects on the environment no one knew. It was purchased by Vidian Land Solutions in offshore shell corporations, shielding it from regulators' grasp. Cody's assignment, as part of the Phoenix Rising Agreement, was covertly simple. He was the in-house watch and home cover. His task was to present the semblance of regular family life while Vidian teams, disguised as water delivery or geology survey crews, delivered the chemical under the darkness of night. Phase 3 of the scheme was the human shield, a real resident on the property to make its occupancy seem normal. The agreement never specified a name but described exactly the circumstance Janelle found herself in, one, sole occupant on an off-grid system. Oddly enough, it had a sweetener clause for Cody himself, $50,000 for maintaining this on-site cover in existence for 12 months. He wasn't simply allowing Janelle to use the property, he was being paid for it. Phase 4, the clean flip, was the last. After 18 to 24 months had passed and the TCD-7 chemicals supposedly had dissolved, Vidian would have an environmental testing firm produce a fake report claiming the land had no problem. With that clean report in pocket, the property would then be highly valuable. The sale, pre-negotiated to a national homebuilder, was going to be worth $15 million, half of the earnings. Cody's down payment? A definite $5 million. It all rested on the poison in the ground. But what is TCD-7, for goodness sake? Early EPA evaluations assigned it as a dioxin-like chemical, meant to operate effectively at breaking down heavy metals but still horribly poisonous to living organisms. This is a derivative of Agent Orange, and the stuff was meant to be terrible and persistent. Short-term exposure can cause skin sores, respiratory issues, and liver injury. Long-term exposure, nonetheless, was the real horror: carcinogenic action, endocrine disruption, birth defect, developmental issues, and even potential irreversible cellular changes. Whistleblower Alex Reyes recalls the unprecedented protective measures of crews. Hazmat suits that covered them, positive pressure helmets, the same gear used in high-level viral outbreak simulation. And they still used it just 100 feet from Janelle and her daughter Savannah, who slept in a thin-walled trailer. Wind direction was allegedly computed to be minimized in exposure, but as Reyes queried, how do you control the wind? How do you control dust? The poison was fed 8 nights in the summer of 2021, between 2 and 5 via unmarked tanker trucks with hoses connected to Cody's underground cistern. Quick, on target, and unseen to the world at large. Recall Janelle's enigmatic fatigue, her chronic illnesses, Savannah's exposure. They had been living on the front lines of an eco-scam. The man responsible for their protection wasn't just aware of it, he was directing it. Every excursion, every harassment, every decision had been profit-motivated, not security-motivated for loved ones. And then came the authorities. With testimony from whistleblowers, the EPA also had a pollution map and were prepared to act. On a drizzly autumn morning in 2023, weeks after Janelle had winterized the property and left, Coyote Pass was no longer just a reality TV backdrop. Dark subs and an EPA-declared mobile lab van drove down the dirt road. Dozens of agents and forensic specialists arrived, not to tour house lots or review building permits, but to greet a toxic chemical operation. Within minutes, serene desert vistas were changed. Respirator-masked agents in full hazmat suit equipment swept the property methodically, ground-penetrating radar and soil vapor sensors at their disposal. Peace at Coyote Pass had been shattered, replaced with the eerie hum of an active federal investigation. And for Cody Brown, the very contrived world of family soap opera drama was about to meet the force of cold steel machinery of justice. EPA agents were not gathering random samples. Thanks to whistleblower Alex Reyes, they had Vidian's own application maps, the same plans that the midnight crews had used to lay TCD-7 evenly across the grounds. Every soil tube, every core sample, was removed with precision, intended to reveal the secrets Cody Brown had sought to uncover. And then they started to concentrate on one particular location, the crumpled down earth where Janelle Brown's RV used to sit. There, the samples had been intact, surface soil, deep core samples, even root tissue from desert scrub in the region. This was ground zero, where there had been human contact. Sun broke through clouds as the last sample was sealed away, glinting off sterile plastic, evidence that could no longer be ignored. At the Environmental Protection Agency's National Enforcement Investigation Center in Colorado, scientists exposed the most advanced chemical tests available. They weren't looking for mercury or arsenic, but they were looking for the TCD-7 chemical ghost. After conducting the testing, one of the scientists concluded the results this way: disastrous. There were trace levels of TCD-7 throughout the property, but at and around where Janelle used to have her old RV spot, it was through the roof. Unregistered tetrachlorobenzene compound concentrations were 3,000 times higher than the most rigorous lifetime exposure deemed safe even in most contaminated industrial areas. EPA official recounted the horror: this wasn't contamination. It was a chemical attack. The soil is essentially dead. Microbial life has been destroyed, and the compounds can be dangerously toxic for decades to come. And a family lived in the middle of it. The report also confirmed Cody's motive. In the same samples where TCD-7 was at its highest, levels of arsenic and mercury were far lower in untreated areas. The chemical was doing its intended job, hiding the Earth's own toxicity while presenting a much more toxic man-made threat. The Earth did not just scream of pollution, it roared of man's interference, a calculated cover-up, and a family played like pawns. Riding on that evidence, federal officials moved fast. Arrest warrants were issued at the same time on November 17, 2023, for Cody Brown and Victor Sterling, head of Vidian Land Solutions. In Scottsdale, tactical units stormed Vidian's glass-walled offices, arresting Sterling during a conference call. At Robin's multi-million-dollar estate in Flagstaff, the strange encounter occurred. Cody, recording a confession for sister wives, was ambushed by 6 federal agents who produced the warrant. The leader of the reality clan TV family was handcuffed in front of his wife and youngest relatives, charged with conspiring to defraud the environment, wire fraud, and 14 counts of violating the Toxic Substances Control Act. The family was shocked. Mary was said to have stood frozen in shock. Christine and Janelle immediately grasped the horrific truth: years of delay, battle, and illness weren't dysfunction. Janelle's fatigue, her allergies, Cody's withdrawal, all were part of a lethal cover-up. The courtroom was the final destination of betrayal and revelation. Cody, without his usual bravado, was seated in an ill-fitting suit at the defense table, diminutive and pale from public memory. Janelle and Christine arrived not as wives, but as victims and witnesses. Lead EPA attorney Maria Flores methodically destroyed Cody's fantasy, unraveling the secret contract, Reyes' whistleblower affidavit, and the damning soil analysis. The grand finale came during Flores' cross-examination, when all pretense was stripped bare. The trial uncovered not a harried patriarch, but a ruthless, egotistical criminal. Everything about the Coyote Pass scam, the chemical poisoning, the family and media manipulation, the multi-million-dollar payoff, was exposed to the country. Let us go back to summer 2021. Janelle Brown, mother of 6, settled onto the Coyote Pass property in an RV. Yes, Cody Brown admitted in court, she's very independent. She wanted to do it. But Attorney Flores persisted, and you encouraged her, telling her she was tough, a pioneer. Right? Cody replied, I'm supportive of my wife's aspirations. And the poignant query, did you encourage her aspiration knowing, as shipping documents disclosed by Mr. Reyes establish, that you had just secretly sprayed the ground with an unlawful cancer-inducing dioxin compound called TCD7? Cody had assured her it was absurd, that he loved his family. But Flores drove the point, love? You put the mother of 6 on ground you were intentionally poisoning. You saw her wrestle with tiredness and breathing problems and did nothing because your $5 million bribe was more valuable than her life. You used her as human Geiger counter, didn't you? It was just one question, and suddenly it all became clear. All the brawls, all the delaying tactics, all the baffling moments on the television show assumed coldly grotesque meaning. Cody's rage at Christine for wishing to leave wasn't about ego or polygamy, it was about protecting the illusion, his carefully constructed cover. His public complaints of poverty were discovered to be a diversion. In fact, Vidian Land Solutions had pumped him with hundreds of thousands of dollars while the chemical did its deadly work. And Janelle? Her bravery wasn't psychological. It was physiological, a desperate battle against a chemical assault she had no idea she was experiencing, perpetrated by the one person she utterly trusted. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts was the unanimous verdict. Cody Brown and Victor Sterling were convicted of a conspiracy so grandiose and cruel that the court was amazed. Their trial judge addressed them directly. Few cases have reached this court involving environmental terrorism and threats to families. You did not just poison land for money. You poisoned the very idea of family. Brown, you made your loved ones pawns in a scheme that endangered not only them, but the entire community and Flagstaff's aquifer as well. You were paid in human life for your greed. The penalties were record-breaking. Cody and Sterling were each given a $50 million penalty, the largest ever domestic environmental crime fine in Arizona history. Coyote Pass property overnight became a federal Superfund site, a cleanup effort that lasted decades to ensure that nobody else ever suffered. Cody Brown himself received the ultimate punishment, 30 years in federal prison. The actual story isn't Cody Brown, however. It's the women who backed him up. For Christine and Janelle, the verdict was a sobering validation of what they had long realized. The land was not only emotionally poisonous, but poison physically as well. Janelle's resilience was redescribed as having battled off an attack of chemicals, instead of an unsuccessful marriage. Her willingness to finally leave Cody and the land could have saved her life. In a landmark civil settlement, the state's victim fund compensated Janelle, Christine, and the children who lived on the property for lifetime medical monitoring and economic security. The Coyote Pass pipeline was shut down. The fantasy was invented, but the survivors are real. They survived not only a toxic family, but toxic terrain, and they taught us that the most heroic thing to be is to be free of the poison of the past. This inquiry is our only reconstruction from insider and whistleblower testimony. It is a question, how far will we turn a blind eye for the sake of entertainment? What else may just be lurking beneath the surface of what we think is our reality? Undefined. Leave a comment below with your opinions. Undefined. If this inquiry left you in awe, share it with others. Unit. And for even further down the rabbit hole the mainstream won't go, subscribe to TLC Sister Wives Real News. Unit. Thanks for watching.